This is a story about Captain James Mitchell, a fighter pilot who shot down an enemy aircraft in 2018. But when the wreckage was found, investigators discovered something that shouldn't exist. The enemy pilot's body was never recovered, but they found a flight suit with a name tag. It read Captain James Mitchell, the same name, the same birth date, the same blood type. James swears he looked into the cockpit during the dogfight and saw his own face staring back at him. 7 years later, on the exact same date, James would board a plane for a routine mission and vanish without a trace. This is the story of the pilot who shot down his own future, and the haunting question that still remains: was it really him in that cockpit? Or is James Mitchell still out there, flying toward a fate he's already witnessed? The morning of September 15, 2018, started like any other day at Kadena Air Base. Captain James Mitchell woke up at 0500 hours, went through his usual routine, and reported for briefing at 0630. He was 32 years old, had been flying F-15 Eagles for 8 years, and had never lost a single engagement. His squadron called him Ghost because of how smoothly he moved through the sky. The briefing was standard: patrol the eastern sector, maintain radio contact, return by 1400 hours. Nothing special, nothing dangerous. James remembered checking the weather reports: clear skies, perfect visibility. He remembered joking with his wingman, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, about grabbing lunch at that new burger place off base. He remembered everything about that morning because it was the last normal moment of his life. They took off at 800 hours. 2 F-15s cutting through the morning sky like silver arrows. The ocean stretched endlessly below them, deep blue and calm. James felt that familiar sense of peace that only came when he was flying. Up here, everything made sense. Up here, he was in control. Then, at 8:47 hours, everything changed. Ghost, I've got an unidentified contact on radar, bearing 270, 20 miles out and closing fast. James checked his instruments. There it was, a single aircraft moving at incredible speed, heading straight toward them. His training kicked in immediately. Copy that, Dragon. I see it. Command, this is Ghost Leader. We have an unidentified aircraft in our sector, requesting identification. The response from base came back confused. Ghost Leader, we show no aircraft in your sector. Repeat, no aircraft on our screens. James frowned. That was impossible. The radar contact was clear as day, and it was getting closer, fast. Command, visual contact in 10 seconds. This thing is moving. And then he saw it. At first, it was just a glint of metal in the distance, but as it approached, James felt his blood run cold. It was an F-15 Eagle, the exact same aircraft he was flying, same model, same configuration, but there were no markings, no identification numbers, just bare metal reflecting the morning sun. Ghost, are you seeing this? Marcus sounded shaken. I see it. The unknown aircraft didn't respond to any radio hails. It didn't change course. It kept coming, and as it got closer, James could see it was positioning for an attack. Command, the unidentified aircraft is hostile. Repeat, hostile contact. Requesting permission to engage. There was a pause. Too long. Then, Ghost Leader, we still show nothing on radar. Use extreme caution. But James didn't have time for caution. The enemy aircraft was locking weapons on him. His threat warning system screamed in his helmet. Dragon, brake left. He's going hot. Both pilots scattered as a missile streaked between them. The enemy was trying to kill them, and he was good, too good. James had faced skilled pilots before, but this was different. Every move the enemy made, every tactical decision, it was like fighting someone who knew exactly what he was going to do before he did it. They engaged over the open ocean, 2 F-15s dancing in a deadly ballet 7 miles above the water. James tried every trick he knew, every maneuver he'd perfected over 8 years of flying, but the enemy matched him
move for move. It was during a high G turn inverted that James got his first clear look into the enemy cockpit. His heart stopped. The face behind that visor, the way the pilot held his hands on the controls, the slight tilt of the head. James had seen that exact posture 1,000 times, in photographs, in videos, in mirrors. It was him. He was looking at himself.
For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, James Mitchell stared at his own face through 2 layers of reinforced canopy glass. The other pilot, the impossible pilot, stared back. And then something happened that James would replay in his mind every single night for the next 7 years. The other pilot raised his hand, not in aggression, not reaching for weapons controls. He simply raised his hand in what looked like a wave, or maybe a warning. James couldn't tell. The gesture was slow, deliberate, almost sad. Then the enemy aircraft rolled hard and climbed, trying to gain altitude advantage. James's training overrode his shock. Survival instinct kicked in. His hands moved on the controls without conscious thought, muscle memory taking over when his mind couldn't process what he'd seen. He pulled into a vertical climb, tracking the enemy, and in that perfect moment when the angles aligned and his targeting system locked, he fired. The missile left his aircraft with a familiar whoosh. He watched it arc through the sky, watched the enemy try to evade, deploy countermeasures, do everything right. But it wasn't enough. The missile found its target. The explosion was smaller than James expected. No massive fireball, just a quick flash, and then the enemy F-15 was tumbling through the sky, trailing smoke, pieces breaking off as it fell toward the ocean below. Splash 1, James heard himself say, his voice mechanical, distant. Enemy destroyed. Marcus was shouting something over the radio. Command was demanding a report, but James couldn't focus on any of it. He was watching the wreckage fall, and all he could think was, I just killed myself. They flew search patterns for 2 hours, marking the coordinates where the aircraft went down. A recovery team was dispatched immediately. James and Marcus returned to base, where they were separated and debriefed individually. James sat in a white room with 2 intelligence officers and told them everything, except what he'd seen in that cockpit. When they asked him if he'd gotten a visual on the pilot, James hesitated. Then he lied. He said the sun glare made it impossible to see clearly. He said everything happened too fast. The officers accepted this. Why wouldn't they? Who would believe the truth? That night, James couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the engagement. The way the enemy pilot moved, the way he'd raised his hand, that moment of recognition. It had to be coincidence. Stress, adrenaline playing tricks on his mind. That was the only logical explanation. But 3 days later, the recovery team found the wreckage. James was in the mess hall when his commanding officer, Colonel Sarah Hendricks, found him. Her face was pale, and she asked him to come to her office immediately. The walk across the base felt like walking to his own execution. In her office, spread across her desk were photographs from the crash site, twisted metal, burned components, and there, in the center of it all, a flight suit. James, Colonel Hendricks said quietly, I need you to look at something. She handed him a photograph. It showed a name tag, partially burned but still legible. The letters seemed to jump off the photo and wrap around James's throat. Captain J. Mitchell. His hands started shaking. That's not possible. There's more. She handed him another photo, a patch from the flight suit. It showed the insignia of his squadron. Then another photo, dog tags, melted but readable, with a service number that was only 3 digits different from his own. The blood type matches yours, AB negative, less than 1% of the population. We ran it twice. James sat down hard. The room was spinning. We couldn't recover the body, she said. It appears the pilot ejected before impact, but we found no parachute, no emergency beacon, nothing, just these items. She paused. James, I need you to tell me everything, and I mean everything. What did you see up there? So he told her. He told her about the face in the cockpit, about the wave, about the absolute certainty that he'd been looking at himself. He expected her to call for a psychiatric evaluation, to ground him, to think he'd lost his mind. Instead, she opened a drawer and pulled out a file, a classified file with red stamps across the top. You're not the first pilot to report something like this. James
James stared at the classified file like it might bite him. Colonel Hendricks slid it across the desk, but she didn't let go immediately. "What you're about to read doesn't leave this room," she said. "Officially, this conversation never happened. Officially, you shot down an unidentified aircraft of unknown origin. That's the story. That's what goes in your report. Do you understand?" James nodded slowly. "What's really going on?" She released the file. "Read it first, then we'll talk." The file was thin, maybe 20 pages, but every page made James's skin crawl. It documented 7 other incidents over the past 40 years, different locations, different branches of military, but always the same impossible scenario. In 1983, a Navy pilot named Commander Richard Torres engaged an enemy aircraft over the Persian Gulf. He reported seeing his own face in the cockpit. The wreckage was never found. In 1991, an Air Force captain named Jennifer Walsh encountered an identical aircraft during the Gulf War. She refused to fire, broke off engagement. 3 weeks later, she disappeared during a routine training flight. Her aircraft was found crashed in the desert, empty. No body, no ejection seat deployment, just an empty cockpit. In 2004, a Marine pilot named David Chen, Marcus's older cousin, reported the same thing. He was immediately grounded, underwent psychiatric evaluation, and was eventually discharged. He spent the rest of his life trying to convince people he wasn't crazy. He died in 2015. Suicide, according to the official report. There were 4 more cases, all similar, all buried, all classified. "Why are you showing me this?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Colonel Hendricks leaned back in her chair. She looked tired, older than her 48 years. "Because you deserve to know you're not insane, and because I need your help." "My help with what?" "Finding out what the hell is actually happening." She pulled out another photo, this one from James's crash site. It showed a piece of equipment recovered from the wreckage. "Our tech guys analyzed this. It's an avionics module, standard equipment in an F-15, except this one has a manufacturing date stamped on it." She slid the photo closer. James looked at the stamp. His blood went cold. The date read September 15th, 2025. That's 7 years from now, James said stupidly, because his brain couldn't process any other response. "Yes, that's impossible. So is everything else about this situation." Colonel Hendricks stood and walked to her window, looking out over the airfield. "I've been investigating these incidents for 3 years, James, ever since I came across the Torres file by accident. The military doesn't want to acknowledge this. They bury it, call it equipment malfunction, pilot error, classified enemy technology, anything but the truth." "What truth? What are you saying? That I shot down a plane from the future?" She turned to face him. "I'm saying something is happening that we don't understand. Something involving time or parallel realities or technology so advanced that it might as well be magic. And I'm saying that in every single documented case, the pilot who encountered their double either disappeared within 6 months or died under mysterious circumstances." The room suddenly felt cold. "You think I'm going to disappear? I think you're in danger. I think whatever happened up there, it's not over." She returned to her desk and opened her computer. "There's a pattern. The encounters happen on specific dates, dates that have significance." "What kind of significance?" "That's what we need to find out." She pulled up a calendar. "Your engagement happened on September 15th. Richard Torres's happened on September 15th, 1983. Jennifer Walsh, September 15th, 1991. Are you seeing the pattern?" James felt sick. September 15th. Every single incident, same date, different years. But why? What's special about September 15th? For you, I was hoping you could tell me. James thought back. September 15th. The date had never meant anything special to him. It wasn't his birthday, not an anniversary, not any holiday he knew of, just another day. Except a memory surfaced, faint, from childhood. He was 7 years old, sitting sitting in his grandfather's workshop. His grandfather, also named James Mitchell, also a pilot, had been teaching him about aircraft, and his grandfather had told him something about a date. "My grandfather," James said slowly. "He died on September 15th, 1979, before I was born." Colonel Hendricks went very still. "How did he die?" "Plane crash. Training accident. They never found out what caused it. His aircraft just went down over the ocean. They recovered the plane, but his body was never found."
Colonel Sarah Hendricks immediately opened a new search on her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced urgency. James watched her face as she read, watched the color drain from her cheeks. Colonel Sarah Hendricks immediately opened a new search on her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced urgency. James watched her face as she read, watched the color drain from her cheeks. "James Mitchell, Sr.," she read aloud. "Captain, United States Air Force, born March 3, 1945, died September 15, 1979. Aircraft went down during a routine training mission off the coast of California. Wreckage recovered, body never found. Cause of crash listed as unknown." She looked up. "He was flying an F-4 Phantom." "Yes," James confirmed. "My father was only 5 when it happened. He barely remembers him." Sarah continued reading, scrolling through archived files. "There's something here, a witness statement I almost missed. One of the other pilots in the training exercise reported seeing a second aircraft in the area, an aircraft that wasn't supposed to be there. But radar showed nothing, so it was dismissed as sun glare." She looked at James. "Does that sound familiar?" It was exactly what had happened to him, down to every detail. "This goes back further than I thought," Sarah said quietly. "Much further. If your grandfather experienced the same thing, and if the pattern holds, that means someone encountered him, someone who looked just like him. But who? My father never became a pilot. He was too afraid after what happened. And I'm the only other James Mitchell in our family." Sarah stood abruptly. "I need to make some calls. There's someone who might be able to help us, a physicist who consults for the Department of Defense on classified projects. If anyone can make sense of this, it's her." "A physicist? You think this is some kind of time travel?" "I think this is something that breaks every rule of physics we understand, which means we need someone who understands those rules well enough to know how they might be broken." She grabbed her jacket. "Go back to your quarters. Act normal. Don't discuss this with anyone, not even Marcus. I'll contact you when I know more." James left her office feeling like he was walking through a dream. The base looked the same as always. Pilots walking to briefings, ground crews working on aircraft. Everything normal, everything wrong. He went to his quarters but couldn't stay still. His mind kept returning to that moment in the sky, the face in the cockpit, the wave. What had the other pilot been trying to tell him? Was it a warning? A goodbye? He pulled out his phone and scrolled to his father's number. He hadn't called home in 2 weeks. Suddenly, he needed to hear his father's voice. "James?" His father answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Dad. Everything's fine. I just wanted to talk." There was a pause. His father knew him too well. "You never call in the middle of the day just to talk. What's wrong?" James sat on his bunk. "Dad, tell me about Grandpa, about the day he died." Another pause, longer this time. "Why are you asking about this now?" "Please, it's important." His father sighed. "I was only 5. I don't remember much, but I remember your grandmother. She was never the same after. She used to say the strangest thing. She said he'd been acting different in the weeks before the crash. Distracted, worried about something. He'd wake up from nightmares, but he wouldn't tell her what they were about. Did he ever mention seeing anything unusual when he was flying? Not to me. I was too young." But he hesitated. "There was a letter. Your grandmother kept it in a box with his things. After she died, I inherited it. I never showed you because I thought it would just upset you. It was strange, James. Really strange." James gripped the phone tighter. "What did it say?" "He wrote it the day before he died. It was addressed to someone named James Mitchell, but not himself. He wrote it like he was writing to someone else with the same name, someone he'd met. The letter talked about choices and fate and sacrifice. It didn't make any sense. I always thought maybe the stress of flying had
had gotten to him. Dad, I need you to find that letter. Can you send me a picture of it? James, what's going on? I can't explain right now, but please, it's important. 20 minutes later, his phone buzzed. His father had sent 3 photos of an old yellowed letter, written in careful handwriting. James sat on his bunk and read words written 40 years ago by a grandfather he'd never met. Dear James, the letter began. If you're reading this, then it happened. You saw me up there just like I saw you. I know you're confused. I know you're scared. I've been living with that fear for 3 weeks now, ever since the day I looked into a cockpit and saw my own face staring back at me. I didn't shoot. I couldn't. How do you kill yourself? How do you pull that trigger? So I broke off, and I've spent every day since then wondering if I made the right choice. Because here's what I know now. Here's what I figured out. This isn't random. This is a loop, a cycle. Something in our bloodline, in our family, makes us part of this. I've done research, gone through old family records. There was a James Mitchell in World War II, fighter pilot, disappeared over the Pacific on September 15, 1944. And before him, a James Mitchell in World War I, same thing, September 15, 1918. Same date going back generations. We're caught in something, you and I. Something that repeats, and I think I know why. I think one of us, somewhere in time, made a choice that created a debt that has to be paid over and over. The universe keeping its books balanced. I'm going up tomorrow, September 15th. I know what's going to happen. I've known for 3 weeks. I'm going to see myself again, and this time I'm going to make a different choice, because maybe, just maybe, if I do, you won't have to. Take care of the family, live a good life, and if you ever see yourself up there in the sky, remember this: we're not fighting each other, we're fighting fate itself. Your grandfather, James Mitchell.
James read the letter 4 times, each word sinking deeper into his consciousness like stones into water. His grandfather had known. He'd known he was going to die, and he'd gone up anyway. The phrase, "make a different choice," echoed in James's mind. What choice? What had his grandfather done differently? A knock on his door startled him. He quickly put his phone away. "Come in." Marcus entered, looking worried. "Hey man, you okay? You've been quiet since the mission. Everyone's talking about that weird aircraft you shot down." James forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired." Marcus sat down on the opposite bunk. They'd been friends since flight training, had saved each other's lives more than once. If James was going to trust anyone, it should be Marcus. "Dragon," James said carefully, "do you remember your cousin, David Chen?" Marcus's expression darkened immediately. "Why are you asking about David? I heard he had some kind of incident before he was discharged." "He saw something," Marcus said quietly. "Something that scared him so badly he never flew again. My family doesn't talk about it. They think he had a breakdown, but David wasn't crazy, Ghost. He was the most stable guy I knew. Whatever he saw up there, it was real." "Did he ever tell you what it was?" Marcus looked at the closed door, then back at James. 2 weeks before he died, he called me. He was drunk, crying, barely making sense. He kept saying he should have fired, that he should have taken the shot. He said he'd seen himself, Ghost. Said he'd looked into another cockpit and seen his own face, and he couldn't pull the trigger. He said it was the biggest mistake of his life. James felt cold. What happened after he saw himself? He started having dreams, nightmares, about crashing, about dying. They got worse and worse until he couldn't sleep anymore. Then one day, 6 months after the incident, they found him in his garage, carbon monoxide poisoning. They ruled it suicide, but I never believed it. David wouldn't do that. He had a wife, 2 kids he loved more than anything. What do you believe happened? Marcus met his eyes. I think whatever he saw up there came back for him. I think he knew it was coming. He leaned forward. "Ghost, why are you asking me this? Did you see something during that engagement?" Before James could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Hendricks. 2 words. "My office, now." James stood. "I have to go. Debriefing. At 2100 hours? Classified stuff. You know how it is." Marcus grabbed his arm. "James, if something's wrong, you can tell me." "I know," James said, but he pulled away anyway. Some things couldn't be shared.
Some burdens couldn't be split. Colonel Hendricks' office was dark, except for her desk lamp. She wasn't alone. A woman in her 50s sat in the corner. Asian features, graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. She wore civilian clothes, but carried herself with military precision. "Captain Mitchell," Hendricks said. "This is Dr. Keiko Yamamoto. She is a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum mechanics and temporal anomalies." Dr. Yamamoto stood and shook James's hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze unsettling. "Colonel Hendricks has briefed me on your situation. I've also reviewed the classified files on similar incidents. What you experienced is theoretically possible, Captain, though the implications are disturbing." "Theoretically possible?" James repeated. "I shot down a plane from 7 years in the future? Not necessarily the future. Possibly a parallel timeline. Possibly a closed temporal loop. The distinction matters." She pulled out a tablet and began drawing diagrams. "Standard causality says the future cannot affect the past, but quantum mechanics suggests multiple timelines can exist simultaneously. If two timelines intersect at a specific point, time and place, individuals from both timelines could potentially interact." "In English, please." "You might not have encountered your future self. You might have encountered a version of yourself from an alternate timeline where events unfolded differently. The intersection point is September 15th for reasons we don't understand. Something about that date creates a weakness in the barrier between timelines." Colonel Hendricks pulled up a map on her computer. "Dr. Yamamoto has been reviewing the coordinates of all documented incidents. They're not random. They all occur within a specific geographic area." She zoomed in. The locations formed a rough circle in the Pacific Ocean. "This area has unusual electromagnetic properties. Ships and aircraft have reported compass malfunctions here for decades." "You're talking about something like the Bermuda Triangle," James said. "I'm talking about something far stranger," Dr. Yamamoto replied. "We've detected quantum fluctuations in this region that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. Something here is thin. The fabric of space-time itself is damaged or different, and every September 15th it gets thinner." James thought of his grandfather's letter, the pattern going back generations. "How long has this been happening?" "We don't know. Records only go back so far. But based on the evidence, at least a century, possibly longer. And the people who encounter their doubles? What happens to them?" Dr. Yamamoto and Colonel Hendricks exchanged glances. "That's the part we don't fully understand," Hendricks said carefully. "But the pattern is consistent. Within 6 months to a year, they either disappear or die, usually on or around September 15th. "So I have less than a year to live?" "We don't know that for certain," Dr. Yamamoto said, but her tone suggested otherwise. "However, there's another possibility we need to consider. Your grandfather's letter mentioned making a choice. What if the cycle can be broken? What if the reason these incidents keep happening is because the choice keeps being made wrong?" "What choice? What had your grandfather done differently?" "Your grandfather, according to his letter, did not. David Chen did not. Jennifer Walsh did not. But you did. You shot down your double. Your grandfather, according to his letter, did not. David Chen did not. Jennifer Walsh did not. But you did. You might have done something no one else in this cycle has ever done. You might have changed the pattern." James felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying I might have killed my future self? That I erased my own timeline? Or you might have freed yourself from it? Or you might have made everything worse? We're in uncharted territory here, Captain. But there's one way to find out if things have changed." "How?" She looked at Colonel Hendricks, who pulled out another file. This one was marked with even higher classification stamps. "We need to find the pilot you shot down. The body was never recovered. If he ejected, if he survived somehow, he might still be out there, and he might have answers." Colonel Hendricks opened the new file with careful deliberation, as if the contents might leap out and attack them. Inside were satellite images, reconnaissance photos, and technical documents stamped with clearances James had never seen before. "What you're about to learn is classified at the highest level," Hendricks said. "There are maybe 20 people in the entire military who know this exists. It's called called Project Mirror. Dr. Yamamoto took over. In 1952, the Air Force started noticing patterns, pilot disappearances on specific dates, unexplained aircraft sightings that matched our own technology perfectly. At first they thought it was Soviet spies or secret weapons programs, but the evidence didn't fit. The aircraft were too advanced, or sometimes too outdated. Technology that didn't exist yet, or technology that had been retired years before. She pulled up a grainy photograph from the 1950s. It showed an aircraft that looked almost like a modern fighter jet, but the photo was dated 1953. Project Mirror was established to investigate these anomalies. For 70 years, it's been documenting cases like yours, cases where pilots encounter themselves. The project has 3 primary theories. She held up one finger. Theory 1, parallel universes bleeding into each other. Theory 2, time loops caused by some unknown phenomenon. Theory 3, advanced technology creating temporal echoes or duplicates. Which theory is correct? James asked. We don't know. Possibly all 3, possibly none. But Project Mirror has been collecting data, trying to predict when and where these incidents will occur. And they've been searching for something else. Dr. Yamamoto paused. They've been searching for the source. Colonel Hendricks pointed to a location on the map. A small island in the Pacific, uninhabited, roughly at the center of the circle where all the incidents occurred. Meridian Island, she said. Officially, it doesn't exist. It's not on any civilian maps. It's not claimed by any nation. And according to Project Mirror, it's the epicenter of all temporal anomalies in this region. James studied the satellite images. The island was small, maybe 2 miles across, covered in dense vegetation. But there was something else. Structures, buildings that looked old, weathered, but clearly man-made. What's on that island? That's the question Project Mirror has been trying to answer for decades. Every attempt to investigate has failed. Ships that get too close experience equipment malfunctions and have to turn back. Aircraft that fly over report severe electromagnetic interference. 3 times teams have actually landed on the island. None of them came back. You think the pilot I shot down is there? We think if he survived, that's where he would have gone. That's where they all go. She pulled up more files, photos of abandoned aircraft found near the island over the years, wreckage that shouldn't exist, F-15s discovered in the 1970s, F-22s found in 2003, years before they were officially deployed. The island is calling them, or something on the island is. We believe there's a structure there, something ancient or something built by whoever, whatever, is causing these anomalies, and we believe the pilots who encounter their doubles are drawn to it. They don't just disappear randomly. They go to Meridian Island. James felt like the floor was dropping out from under him. You want me to go there? We want you to volunteer, Colonel Hendricks corrected. This would be entirely voluntary. But yes, you're the only person who's encountered their double and survived this long while remaining lucid and functional. You're the only one who fought back and won. That might make you different. That might mean you can get to the island and actually return. Or it might mean I'll disappear like all the others. That's a risk, Hendricks admitted. But consider this. You have less than a year before the pattern suggests something will happen to you anyway. We can wait, let fate take its course, and lose you like we've lost all the others. Or you can take control, go to the island, find answers, maybe find a way to break this cycle for good. James thought of his grandfather's letter. We're not fighting each other. We're fighting fate itself. When would I go? 3 weeks, Dr. Yamamoto said. We need time to prepare, to equip you properly, and to wait for the right conditions. The electromagnetic interference around the island fluctuates. There are brief windows when it's weak enough to get through. The next window opens on October 7th. And if I find something, if I learn what's causing this, then maybe we can save the next James Mitchell, and the one after that. This cycle has been going on for generations. You have a chance to end it. James stood and walked to the window. Below, the airfield was quiet. Aircraft aircraft parked in neat rows, everything orderly and controlled. His whole life had been about order, about following procedures, about missions with clear objectives and defined rules of engagement. This was different. This was walking into the unknown with no backup plan and no guarantee of survival. "I need to think about it," James said. "You have 24 hours. After that, we need to start preparations or abandon the mission." James left the office and walked across the base. It was past midnight now, stars brilliant in the clear sky. He thought about all the pilots who'd come before him, his grandfather, David Chen, Richard Torres, Jennifer Walsh, all of them caught in something they didn't understand, all of them consumed by it. He thought about the wave, that strange gesture from the other pilot. What had it meant? Hello? Goodbye? Or something else? His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "You left your jacket in my room. Found something in the pocket. Call me." James called immediately. "What did you find?" "A photograph," Marcus said, his voice strange. "It fell out of your jacket pocket. But Ghost, this is weird. It's a picture of you standing in front of an aircraft, but it's not any aircraft on our base. And the date stamp on the photo says September 15th, 2025. That's 7 years from now." James' blood went cold. "Where are you?" "I'm outside the barracks. I thought I should bring this to you directly." "Stay there. I'm coming." James ran across the base. When he reached Marcus, his friend was standing under a streetlight holding a photograph. James took it with shaking hands. The photo showed him, definitely him, 7 years older, graying at the temples, lines around his eyes. He was standing in front of an F-15, wearing a flight suit, smiling at the camera. But it wasn't a smile James recognized. It was sad, resigned, the smile of a man who knew something terrible. On the back of the photo, in handwriting James recognized, were 6 words: "Don't come to the island. Run."
James stared at the photograph until the image blurred. His own handwriting, his own face, aged by 7 years. A warning from a future that shouldn't exist. "Where did this come from?" Marcus demanded. "Ghost, what the hell is going on?" James couldn't answer. His mind was racing through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. If he'd shot down his future self, how could that future self have left him a photograph? Unless he hadn't killed him. Unless the pilot had ejected, survived, and somehow traveled back to leave this warning. But when? How? James had been under observation since the engagement. He'd never found a mysterious photograph before tonight, which meant it had appeared recently, materialized in his jacket pocket like something out of a magic trick. "I need to go," James said, pocketing the photo. Marcus grabbed his arm. "No, not until you tell me what's happening. David is dead because of something like this. I'm not letting the same thing happen to you." James met his friend's eyes. In them, he saw genuine fear, genuine care. Marcus deserved the truth, or at least part of it. "That aircraft I shot down," James said, "the pilot, it looked like me. Not similar, identical. Because it was me, Marcus. From another timeline, or the future, or something else I don't understand. And now I'm caught in whatever killed your cousin." Marcus released his arm, taking a step back. "That's impossible." "I know, but it's true. The photograph is a warning from myself, telling me not to investigate, not to go looking for answers." "Then don't," Marcus said immediately. "If future you is warning you away, listen to him. Walk away from this." James thought of his grandfather, of all the other pilots caught in this cycle, of the pattern repeating endlessly through generations. "I can't," James said. "If I run, this doesn't end. It just passes to someone else. Another James Mitchell, another pilot in our family, another person who has to face this. My grandfather tried to break the cycle by not shooting. I broke it differently, by pulling the trigger. But maybe neither of those is the right choice. Maybe the only way to end this is to find out what's causing it. And how do you do that?" James pulled out his phone and called Colonel Hendricks. She answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting. "I've found something," James said. "A photograph from my future self. It's a warning." There was a pause. "Bring it to my office, now." 10 minutes later, James, Marcus, Colonel Hendricks, and Dr. Yamamoto were crowded in the office, examining the photograph under a magnifying glass. "The paper is standard photo stock," Dr. Yamamoto said. "But look at this." She pointed to the edge. "There's a degradation pattern here that's consistent with temporal displacement. This photo has experienced chronological stress." "In English," Marcus said, still trying to process everything. "The photo traveled through time," James translated.
translated. It's really from 2025. Dr. Yamamoto turned the photo over, studying the handwriting. The message is clear. Your future self doesn't want you going to Meridian Island, which raises an important question. Why? Because it's dangerous, obviously. Or because him going there creates a paradox. Think about it. If James goes to the island in 2018 and learns the truth, that changes the future. The James Mitchell of 2025 would know what he learned. He would be a different person with different knowledge. But the photograph suggests that 2025 James doesn't want 2018 James to know, which means whatever's on that island, learning about it makes things worse, not better. Dr. Yamamoto was nodding. A stable time loop requires consistency. If you go to the island and gain knowledge that prevents future you from existing, you create a grandfather paradox. You might erase yourself from existence. Or, James said slowly, future me knows that going to the island is how I end up in that cockpit 7 years from now. Maybe going there is what creates the loop. Maybe by investigating, I guarantee that I'll be the pilot I shot down. The room fell silent. Then you definitely shouldn't go, Marcus said firmly. But James was thinking. The photograph had said, don't come to the island. Run. Not don't go to the island. The word choice was specific. Come implied arriving at a destination, as if future James knew that past James was already planning to go. What if it's too late? What if the fact that I'm having this conversation, that I know about the island, means I'm already locked into going? Future me didn't say, don't go. He said, don't come, as if my arrival is inevitable. Dr. Yamamoto pulled up her tablet and started calculating. If we're dealing with a deterministic timeline, then yes, free will becomes an illusion. Every choice you make is predetermined by the choices you've already made. You shot down your future self, which means you must eventually become that future self to be shot down, which means you must go to the island, because that's part of the chain of events that leads to you being in that cockpit. That's insane, Marcus said. That's quantum mechanics, Dr. Yamamoto replied. The universe doesn't care about our sanity. James looked at the photograph again, at his own aged face, at that sad, resigned smile. Future him knew exactly how this would play out, knew that sending the photograph wouldn't change anything. It was a warning that couldn't be heeded, a message from a man trapped in destiny. I'm going to the island, James said. James, no, Marcus started. I have to, not because I want to, but because I already did. That's how time works in a closed loop, right, Dr. Yamamoto? Everything that will happen has already happened. I can't avoid my fate because my fate is already written. But maybe, just maybe, I can understand it. Colonel Hendricks looked at him for a long moment. If you're certain, we start preparations tomorrow. But James, you need to understand, based on everything we know, going to that island is a one-way trip. Everyone who goes there disappears. You might not come back. I know, James said. He looked at the photograph one more time, then placed it on the desk. But I'm already there, aren't I? 7 years from now, I'm standing in front of that aircraft, writing this warning, which means I survive whatever happens next, at least for a while. Or it means you're caught in a loop that never ends, living the same events over and over, always warning your past self, always being ignored, always going to the island anyway. James felt a chill. Is that possible? In a closed time-like curve, yes, you could be living the same span of years repeatedly, experiencing them as linear, but actually trapped in an eternal cycle. From your perspective, you'd live your life normally, never knowing you'd lived it 1,000 times before. The thought was terrifying, but also strangely comforting. If he'd done this before, then he'd survived it before, or at least survived long enough to warn himself. When do we leave? James asked. October 7th, 3 weeks. That gives us time to prepare, to gather equipment, to study the island as much as we can from surveillance. You'll go in alone. We can't risk more people. I'm going with him, Marcus said suddenly. Dragon, no, James said. You're not doing this alone. We're wingmen. That's what it means. We fly together. James wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in Marcus's face, the same determination that had kept them both alive through a dozen combat situations. Okay, James James said. We go together.
The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and dread. James and Marcus underwent specialized training for the mission, survival skills, navigation without electronic equipment, protocols for dealing with temporal anomalies, though no one really knew what those protocols should be. Dr. Yamamoto gave them devices to measure electromagnetic fields, radiation, and what she called chronological distortions, though she admitted the equipment was largely experimental. We're measuring things we don't fully understand with instruments designed to detect phenomena we've only theorized about, she said. But it's better than going in blind. Colonel Hendricks arranged for a modified helicopter that could handle the electromagnetic interference around the island. You'll have a 2-hour window, she briefed them. Get in, investigate, get out. If you're not at the extraction point in 2 hours, we have to leave. The interference cycle will make it impossible to return for another month. James spent his evenings studying everything Project Mirror had collected about Meridian Island. Satellite photos showed structures that seemed to shift positions between images. Thermal scans revealed heat signatures that appeared and disappeared without pattern. The island itself seemed to exist in a state of flux, never quite the same twice. On October 5th, 2 days before the mission, James received a visitor. An old man, maybe 75, walked into the base and asked specifically for Captain James Mitchell. Security almost turned him away, but something about his credentials, his clearance codes, made them call James instead. James met him in a private conference room. The old man was thin, weathered, with eyes that had seen too much. Colonel Mitchell, the man said, extending a shaking hand. My name is Richard Torres. I believe you've read about me. James's heart skipped. You're supposed to be dead. The file said you disappeared in 1983. The file is wrong about a lot of things. Torres sat down heavily. I didn't disappear. I went to the island, and I came back. James sat across from him, barely breathing. What did you find there? Torres was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Hell, he said finally. I found hell, or something so close to it that the difference doesn't matter. He pulled out a worn notebook from his jacket. I've spent 40 years trying to understand what I saw, trying to make sense of it, and I've come to warn you. Don't go to that island, Captain. Whatever you think you'll find, whatever answers you're looking for, they're not worth the price. Everyone keeps warning me not to go, but no one tells me why. What's on that island? Torres opened the notebook. Inside were drawings, equations, observations written in a cramped, desperate hand. The island is a wound, he said, a tear in the fabric of reality. Something happened there, a long time ago, an experiment, an accident, maybe something natural we don't have words for. But it created a rupture. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously on that island. Every possible timeline converges there. He pointed to one of his drawings. It showed a circular structure, like a massive ring standing upright. There's a device at the center of the island, ancient, not built by any government or military I know of. It's what's causing the anomalies. It's pulling people through time, creating echoes, duplicates. Anyone who goes near that device experiences their entire timeline at once. Past, present, and future, all happening simultaneously. You saw yourself there? I saw 1,000 versions of myself, Torres said, his voice shaking. Every choice I had ever made, every decision, spinning off into different timelines. I saw myself as a young man, an old man, dead, alive, happy, destroyed, all at the same time. The human mind isn't designed to process that. It broke me. Took me years to put myself back together. But you survived. You came back. Barely, and only because I ran. I didn't try to understand it. I didn't try to interact with the device. The moment I saw what it was, I ran back to the extraction point and got out. The others, the ones who didn't come back, they couldn't resist. They tried to use the device. They tried to change things, and the island consumed them. James thought about the photograph, his future self's warning. What happens if I go there and use the device? You'll become what you fought. You'll become the pilot in that other cockpit. The device shows you your future, but it also locks you into it.
By observing your timeline, you collapse the quantum probability. You ensure that future happens. It's the ultimate paradox. You go to the island to escape your fate, but going there creates your fate. So the only way to win is not to play. The only way to survive is never to go. Once you set foot on that island, you're part of the loop. You always have been. You always will be. Torres closed his notebook. I came here because Colonel Hendricks contacted me. She told me you were planning to go. I'm begging you, Captain. Don't make the same mistake I did. The knowledge isn't worth it. The answers aren't worth it. Living with uncertainty is better than living with what you'll learn there. James stood and walked to the window. Outside, Marcus was running drills with the extraction team, preparing for a mission that maybe shouldn't happen. If I don't go, the cycle continues. More pilots, more disappearances, more people trapped in this loop. The cycle will continue anyway, Torres said. The island has been there for centuries, maybe longer. It will be there for centuries more. One man can't stop it. One mission can't fix it. The best you can do is save yourself and live knowing I condemned everyone who comes after me to the same fate. Torres sighed. Captain, I'm 75 years old. I've spent 40 years studying this. I've tried everything I could think of to stop it, to break the cycle, to understand the device. Nothing works. The island is beyond us, beyond human comprehension. Going there doesn't save anyone. It just adds one more ghost to the collection. James turned to face him. Did you see my grandfather there? James Mitchell Sr.? Torres's expression changed. Surprise, then sadness. Yes, he said quietly. I saw him. He was one of the echoes, one of the ghosts trapped in the time stream. Still there, still trying to warn people away, still caught in that moment of decision. Going to the island didn't set him free. It imprisoned him forever. The weight of those words settled on James's shoulders like a physical thing. His grandfather, trapped for 40 years in a temporal loop, experiencing his death over and over, unable to escape. I have to go, James said. Not to use the device, not to change anything, but to understand, to see what we're fighting, to know what this really is. Then you're a fool, Torres said. But his tone wasn't angry, just infinitely sad. The island calls to us. We can't help but answer. He stood, suddenly looking even older. If you're determined to go, I can at least give you this. He pulled out a small metal compass. This isn't a normal compass. I built it after I came back, using principles I learned from studying the island. It points toward temporal stability, toward the places where time flows normally. If you get lost on the island, if the timelines start bleeding together, follow this. It might lead you back out. James took the compass. It was warm to the touch, and the needle spun lazily, not pointing north. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might curse my name before this is over.
October 7th arrived gray and cold. James woke at 0400 hours, dressed in silence, and met Marcus at the helicopter pad. Neither of them spoke much. What was there to say? They were flying towards something that defied explanation, armed with instruments that might not work and knowledge that might not help. Colonel Hendricks and Dr. Yamamoto were already there, doing final checks on the equipment. Remember, Dr. Yamamoto said, 2 hours maximum. The electromagnetic window closes at 1200 hours. After that, we can't extract you until November 7th. We'll be back, James said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The helicopter lifted off at 0600 hours. The flight to Meridian Island took 90 minutes. James spent the time staring at Torres's compass. The needle spun slowly, erratically, as if confused about which direction to point. At 0730 hours, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Visual on the island. Beginning approach. Everyone hold on. The interference is starting. The helicopter shuddered. Instruments flickered. James felt a strange sensation in his chest, like his heartbeat was out of sync with itself. The air seemed to shimmer, and for a moment he saw double. Two Marcuses sitting across from him. Two helicopters overlapping. Then it snapped back to normal. That's the chronological distortion, Dr. Yamamoto had warned them. Your perception will fragment. Trust your instruments more than your senses. The island appeared below them through breaks in the clouds, dense jungle, rocky beaches, and at the center, visible even from the air, a massive circular structure rising above the trees. It looked like a ring standing on an edge, easily 100 feet tall, made of a dark material that seemed to absorb light. "That's it," Marcus breathed. "That's the device." The helicopter landed on a clear patch near the beach. James and Marcus jumped out, equipment packs on their backs. The moment their feet hit the ground, James felt it, the wrongness. Time moved differently here. Each second felt too long and too short simultaneously. His thoughts seemed to echo, as if he was thinking them multiple times at once. "Stay focused, Marcus. Don't look at anything too long. Keep moving toward the device." They pushed into the jungle. The vegetation was wrong. Trees that looked ancient stood next to saplings, but both were covered in the same amount of moss. A bird flew overhead, but its wings moved in reverse, pulling it backward through the air. The compass spun wildly, then locked on to a direction. "This way," James said, following the compass deeper into the island. They walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Time had no meaning here. James checked his watch 3 times and saw 3 different readings: 0745, 0812, 0738, all simultaneously true. Then they broke through the tree line and saw it up close. The ring device towered above them, massive and impossible. The material it was made from looked like metal, but flowed like liquid, constantly shifting, never quite solid. Inside the ring, instead of empty space, there was something else, a void, a darkness that wasn't darkness, but the absence of existence itself. And standing in front of the device were people, dozens of people, maybe hundreds, all wearing flight suits, all pilots. James recognized some of them from the Project Mirror files. Richard Torres, looking exactly as he had in his 1983 photograph. Jennifer Walsh. David Chen, his grandfather, young and vital, staring at the device with haunted eyes. They were ghosts, echoes, trapped in this moment forever, reliving their arrival at the island over and over again. "My God," Marcus whispered. "They're all here. Everyone who ever came to this island." James walked forward, and the echoes didn't react. They couldn't see him, or maybe they could see him, but he was just another echo to them, another ghost passing through their own private time loop. He reached his grandfather. The old man looked so young, 34 years old, the same age James was now. James reached out to touch him, and his hand passed through. Not quite solid, not quite real. "Grandpa," James said anyway. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you got trapped here." The echo didn't respond, just kept staring at the device, frozen in that moment of terrible understanding. A sound behind them made James spin. Another figure was walking toward the device, a pilot in a flight suit. As he got closer, James' blood turned to ice. It was him, not an echo, not a ghost, a solid, real version of himself, but 7 years older. The same face from the photograph, graying temples, lined eyes, that sad, knowing smile. Future James saw them and stopped. For a moment, the 3 of them stood there, past, present, and future, all existing in that same impossible moment. "You came anyway," Future James said. His voice was James's voice, but wearier. "I knew you would. I did too when I was you. What happens? What happens if I touch the device? You see everything. Every possible version of your life, every choice you could make, every path you could take. And the device offers you a deal. It can send you into any of
of those timelines. You can live a different life, make different choices, avoid your mistakes. Future James walked closer. But there's a price. To enter a new timeline, you have to replace yourself in that timeline. You have to erase that version of you and take his place, and the version you erase has to go somewhere. Understanding crashed over James like a wave. Into another timeline? To replace another version? Creating an endless cycle? The first James Mitchell who came here, whoever he was, he made a choice. He used the device. He jumped into a different timeline, and that started the loop. Every James Mitchell since then has been caught in it, displaced into other timelines, replacing other versions, creating echoes and ghosts. We're not dying, we're being scattered across infinity, each of us trying to find our way home. The pilot I shot down, that was you. You were trying to get back to your timeline. I was trying to get back to 2018, to before I made the mistake of coming here. But you shot me down, which means I failed, which means I'm still trapped in the loop. Future James looked at the device, and soon you'll be here in my place, 7 years older, trying to warn your younger self not to come. And he won't listen either, because we never listen. We can't. It's part of the loop. Marcus stepped forward. Then we destroy it. We destroy the device and end the loop. Future James laughed, but it was a broken sound. You can't destroy it. It's not really here, not in any fixed timeline. It exists in all timelines simultaneously. Destroying it in one timeline just creates another branch where it still exists. There has to be a way to stop this, James said desperately. There is, Future James said quietly. Don't use the device. Turn around. Go back to the helicopter. Leave the island and never come back. Break the cycle by refusing to participate in it. But what about you? What about Grandpa and all the others? We are already lost. Echoes in the time stream. But you can still save yourself. And if you save yourself, maybe the cycle weakens. Maybe eventually it breaks. Future James pulled something from his pocket, the photograph. This is when I took this picture. Right now, right here. I'm about to go back and leave it in your jacket pocket, using the device to jump back 2 weeks.
That's what creates the warning you found. I'm trying to save you, but I know it won't work because it never works. I've done this 1,000 times, and you always come to the island anyway. James looked at the device, at the swirling darkness inside the ring, at all the echoes of pilots trapped forever in temporal loops. He thought about Torres's warning, about his grandfather's letter, about every person who'd stood where he was standing and made a choice. The device called to him. He could feel it, the promise of answers, the promise of control, the promise of fixing everything. And he finally understood the device wasn't a machine. It was a trap built on human nature, on our inability to accept fate, on our desperate need to control our destiny. The only way to win was to accept that he couldn't win, to accept uncertainty, to accept that some questions had no answers. James turned away from the device. Come on, Marcus, he said. We're leaving. Marcus stared at him. That's it? We just leave? We leave. Future James watched them with that sad smile. You're stronger than I was, or maybe just luckier. This time at least, you're breaking the pattern. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that changes something. What happens to you? James asked. I keep trying, keep jumping, keep searching for a way home. Maybe I'll find it. Maybe I won't. But at least you'll be free. He paused. Live well, James. Make different choices than I did. Don't let the job consume you. Call Dad more often. Tell Sarah you love her before it's too late. Who's Sarah? Future James just smiled. You'll know when you meet her. Take care of her. I didn't. That's my biggest regret. James wanted to ask more, but the compass in his hand was spinning violently. The temporal window was closing. He could feel time solidifying around them, the island trying
trying to trap them the way it had trapped all the others. "We need to go now," he said to Marcus. They ran back through the jungle. The trees reached for them, branches that existed in multiple timelines simultaneously. The echoes of pilots appeared in their path, ghostly warnings of what they could become. James kept his eyes on the compass, following its needle toward stability, toward escape. The helicopter was still there, rotors already spinning. They jumped in, and the pilot immediately lifted off. The island fell away beneath them, shrinking, becoming just another piece of land in the vast ocean. But James looked back. In the center of the island, the Device stood waiting, and around it, the echoes of 100 pilots stood trapped in their own personal hells. "Did we do the right thing?" Marcus asked quietly. James thought about future him, about his grandfather, about all the James Mitchells scattered across timelines, searching for a way home. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but it's the only thing we could do." 7 years later, September 15th, 2025, Captain James Mitchell stood on the same airbase, now promoted to major. He was married to a woman named Sarah, a civilian engineer he'd met 6 months after returning from Meridian Island. They had a daughter named Hope. He still flew, still served, but he'd learned to let go of control, to accept uncertainty, to live with unanswered questions. He never went back to Meridian Island. The military shut down Project Mirror shortly after his mission. Colonel Hendricks retired. Dr. Yamamoto moved to private research. Marcus stayed his wingman, the only other person who understood what they'd witnessed. And sometimes, on September 15th, James would stand on the airfield and look up at the sky, wondering if somewhere, in some other timeline, a version of him was still trapped in the loop, still fighting himself, still searching for a way home. But here, in this timeline, he was free. He'd made a choice. He'd walked away from answers, and somehow that had been the answer all along. The cycle was broken, or at least for him it was. Somewhere on Meridian Island, the Device still waited, still called out to pilots across time and space, still trapped echoes in its temporal web. But James Mitchell escaped, and that would have to be enough. He went home to his wife and daughter, to a normal life, to a future he'd earned by refusing to control it. The pilot who shot down his own future learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to win is to stop fighting. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to accept what you cannot change. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is walking away from power you could have claimed. James Mitchell lived the rest of his life in peace, never knowing if other versions of him still flew through fractured timelines, still searching. But in this timeline, his timeline, he was home, and that was the only ending that mattered.